Okay. You ready for me to jump in, Prado?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 15, 20 minutes, tops. I don't want to keep you guys up late. But when Joe asked me to come out, I assumed that he'd at least be here for this. So Joe, thank you for the warm room. I'm wishing your wife the best in recovery, and I'm glad that everyone's still okay. So let's talk a little bit. One of the things that Joe had asked me was, he said, "What are you going to speak about?" So I know what to put on the flyer. He said, "Will you speak about unity in the California Republican Party?" And I said, "Joe," I hear some laughter, somebody knows who I am. I said, "Joe, unity? There's no unifying with a group of people that want submission from us. And so they don't want us. They don't want conservatives." I'm assuming I'm speaking to Christians, but they don't want Christians, they don't want conservatives. They certainly don't want young people in the Republican Party. And somebody asked me, in fact, Joe Mel's asked me, "Dave, why were they trying to cancel you? What's going on with all of that?" And it's because I threatened them. When you're truly a threat to the establishment in the Republican Party, they will do everything that they can to cancel you. Now, what Jay was telling me just a moment, he says, "David, you came up from the grassroots. You spent 4 years in the grassroots. But isn't it the modus operandi for the Republican Party that they cancel the people that come from the grassroots? Look at Eric Early in his run for U.S. Senate. He was doing really well, picking up a lot of steam, and they ran Steve Garvey against him at the last moment. Now, we all love the Garb, and we're grateful for him and everything, but he was a sacrificial lamb. He got brought out not to win that seat, but to give us a candidate that the fundraising class couldn't fundraise around. Now, I'm not a big fundraiser. Dr. Chris Zaragoza knows this about me. I didn't spend a lot of time dangling my leg out for donations. I refer to the consultant class of the Republican Party as the red light Republicans, the OnlyFans Republicans, as, excuse my verbiage here, but earmuffs, as political prostitutes. They're for sale. They're not here to represent us because they don't have values. We can't be surprised when they get up to Sacramento and they have nothing to say. And so throughout the course of my campaigns, plural, both for Congress and for California State Treasurer, I realized that they didn't want me to win. And that was one of the hardest things for me to realize. There's a couple of things that I could have done to have ran a little bit of a better race. I could have put out information in the voter guide, a full candidate statement, but it's $25 a word for a candidate statement. $6,250 for a full candidate statement. Did you guys know that? $25 a word. In addition to $4,000 for the filing fee. So I wanted to save my campaign $6,250 and not release a full candidate statement. But then I spent 4 weeks, fielding 25, 30 phone calls a day from people that don't use the internet. And so that was a surprise for me. That's something that I could have done better. But when I talk to people in my campaign, diagnosing what went wrong, and people from other campaigns, people say things to me like, David Kohlenberg, who won 13 counties in Northern California and got about 7.5% of the vote. He said if the Republican Party had just known about us earlier, then they would have gotten behind us. And I had to tell him that's not true. That's absolutely not true. I had a good friend of mine, Vincent Romo, who ran for assembly. He said, if we had just raised some money, then they would have gotten behind us. That's not true. It's not true. Because as my wife told me, this is the hardest pill for most people to swallow. It's not that they want to win. They want you to lose. And you rack your brains thinking, well, why does the California Republican Party not want to win? And it's not even the California Republican Party that doesn't want to win. It is the consultant class that is running it that gets paid win or lose. Can you imagine being in a career field where you get paid whether you win or lose? Does that career field exist anywhere else in the world other than for the political consultant class who gets paid, whether they win or lose? They're not particularly loyal to Republicans or to Democrats. But why does it benefit them? Why do you have a bunch of people who have gone 0-500 and they've done nothing but lose for the last 20 or 30 years, continue to do this? And it's because that's how they pay their bills. And so they've heavily infiltrated the Riverside County Republican Party. They've heavily infiltrated the California Republican Party. Because if we have an inefficient, ineffective, and weak Republican Party that does not launch capable candidates, that doesn't have a solid organization to support them, people will feel like they are throwing their money away and their time away if they support Republican candidates in the state of California. Am I right? Yes. They say, well, I don't want to donate to a loser. I don't want to get behind a campaign that's not going to win because Republicans can't win. Case in point, I could barely find parking here for this meeting. I know I was a little bit late, but the parking lot was pretty open. Guys, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. This is the way that it is here in California. This is how we've been indoctrinated. It's like we have just accepted the fact that we are a participation trophy party. And it's because whoever gets that participation trophy controls the delegates. And it took a long time for me to realize, win or lose, you're still getting delegates. And those delegates control who we get behind as a California Republican Party. Now, who controls the delegates? The California Republican Party, the establishment within them, the California Republican Assembly, and the establishment that we have within us, and also Reform California, the homosexual Republican down in San Diego who's telling us what our moral compass is supposed to be. I think that that's a little bit of a bizarre situation for the California Republican Party to make such strange bedfellows that now we're being ran by the LGBTQ crowd from within our own party. When did that happen? Yeah. And it's because we've slowly but surely given up on what the Republican Party stands for in California. And it's not that I am homophobic or anti-Semitic or a Christian nationalist or a white nationalist. It's that I'm a Christian conservative Republican. And when people label me as anything other than that, when I'm going out and finding young Christian conservative men to attend the California Republican Party, isn't that a problem? And it's because we've been so accepting and so tolerant in the Republican Party that we've brought in a bunch of people that don't align with our values. So much so that I'm speaking at another event and I'm saying we're being led by too many women, betas, boomers, and homosexuals. And I say people like Scott Wiener, who introduces bills that legalize sodomy with people who are within 10 years of your age, and that decriminalize human trafficking, and decriminalize knowingly giving someone the AIDS virus. I don't see a bunch of family men voting for ideals like this. And when I'm bringing this up, I get confronted by a rabbi in the back of the room who says, oh, I don't perform same-sex marriages, but how dare you stand up and speak out against homosexuals in any form of leadership in the Republican Party. And he said, and speak out against Jewish people in the Republican Party. I said, I didn't speak out against Jewish people, I spoke out against homosexuals. And it's because of something very simple. And I don't care who I offend at this point, because I've gone so far, I've lost this race. I'm out looking for another job. I have nothing against homosexuals. But do they belong in leadership at the California Republican Party? Are they conservatives by very nature of their lifestyle and the way that they live? Can they have children? And that's a foundational issue for us as conservatives, our children. And so when I stand up and I say, I'm not bashing this man because I believe that it's Judaism that led him down this road. I believe that it's homosexuality that led him down this road. Well, the problem is that message isn't falling on ears that are Christian conservative Republicans. It's falling on the ears of the new tolerant right, the accepting Republican, who just wants a big tent Republican Party that doesn't stand for anything. We don't stand for anything, you'll fall for anything. And that's what we've gotten currently. We have a lieutenant governor candidate who to this day is describing herself as a Democrat and a feminist. But she's the lieutenant governor candidate for the state of California for the Republican Party. Holy smokes, how did that happen? Well, it's because she goes around and she says things like, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. You guys have heard this, right? The Democratic Party left me. I'm sorry, but you left the Democratic Party, right? And then you came and you registered as a Republican, but you didn't change your ideas. You didn't change the way that you've been voting for the last 25 years when you've been in leadership in Sacramento. And so that's where I'm getting to. I'm looking at the Republican Party in the state of California, and I say, the same thing to people who leave the state of California, don't California my Republican Party. Don't Democrat my Republican Party. Because you have a bunch of people that have been voting the same way in California, that they go to other states, and they continue to vote the same way that they did in California. And then they California Texas, and they California North Carolina, and they California Colorado. Well, at some point or another, we have to be willing to articulate how the pendulum is going to swing. And I can tell you that the only way that the pendulum is going to swing is if we start being more accepting of Christ in our Christianity. If we stop using him as a banner of how to get votes, and we start actually using him as an anchor in our community and following the cross. And we're not there currently. We don't stand for anything. And so what do we do to get out ahead of it? Well, we do what I've been trying to do for the last 26 months. I told the California Republican Party, I told Corinne, I told Steve Hilton, I told Sheriff Bianco, the way that we're going to win is with this. And I gave them a 200+ page report that shows the way that you win is by doing what the Oakland A's did when they created Moneyball. You find role players that can play the game. Let's find some good candidates we can get behind. Let's create a mission statement that says what we stand for as California Republicans and how we differentiate ourselves from the rest of the Republican Party. We're our own brand in California, whether you like it or not. And then the third one is how do we then create an organization that can support the players that are playing the game? And that's all I did, is I went around meeting with people, asking them to run for Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of State, Attorney General, Treasurer, Controller, Superintendent of Public Instruction, and I met with Bianco, I met with Steve. Steve asked me to run for Treasurer while I was still in the governor's race. And so I decided that I would run for Treasurer if I could find the other people and meet the other people that were going to be good in their roles. Because I didn't want to protect the people's money, the people's trust. Without the people's trust in prosecutions, we need a good Attorney General. We also need a controller who's going to find the waste, fraud, and abuse so that the Attorney General can prosecute the findings. So I joined and I decided to run for Treasurer. But then what happened was Carl DeMaio doesn't like me. And Carl DeMaio got in Steve's ear and told him, we need to get behind Jennifer Hawks. Well, Jennifer Hawks donated $21,540 to Steve Hilton's campaign. So Steve called me and said, Dave, I can't go against an OG donor in Jennifer Hawks. Carl's picked her, and I don't want to go against you because I asked you to run. Is that the kind of person we want in leadership?
No.
You have to be willing to upset people in leadership. He should have either told me, Dave, I don't want you to run because Jennifer Hawks came along and she's a better candidate. Even though she can't deliver her own speeches, she didn't speak in convention, she can't deliver an interview with articulating what it is that a treasurer does. And she's basically a ghost. People are like, who is Jennifer Hawks? I think she's got 12 followers on Instagram, and my team is 6 of those followers. So I would love to be able to get behind her, but what is there to get behind?
Nothing.
We continuously spoke at different events. She gets up and she says, I don't know. Somebody says, can the treasurer fire people? And she says, I don't know. I'd have to look into it to figure out whether the treasurer could fire someone. Young lady, you are 68 years old. You're talking about the executive branch. You know what an executive does? Executives fire people. What do we all love to hear Donald Trump say? You're fired. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get into the executive branch. I wanted to fire people. I wanted to clean some house. I also wanted to do a better job of managing the $163 billion in daily assets that are managed through the Treasurer's Department. You know, I can't help but think that Nancy Pelosi would have been done a great job managing that portfolio for us and getting us a pretty solid ROI. So I was excited about doing some things, having some fun, but running a campaign against our current lieutenant governor, who's running for treasurer, because she's in on the game. She's in on the take. I got a chance to debate her through a nonprofit called SCANF that concentrates on high-density housing. Why would a nonprofit be concentrated on building high-density housing? So they organized they didn't call it a debate, they called it a
Forum?
forum. But I treated it like a debate. And every time that I opened up my mouth, I attacked Kounalakis on her record. I showed why there's a conflict of interest for her serving in the role as lieutenant governor and as treasurer. I showed the 34 different companies, including lobbyist companies, that are paying her rent through the West Capitol Plaza, which is steps away from the Capitol steps. These are lobbyist groups. These are PG&E is paying a lady Kounalakis rent. And so I brought these things up and they would say, David, you can't debate other candidates here. We're a nonprofit. We're a 501(c)(3). And then the next time I would do the same thing. I would attack her for another thing that she did that was out of alignment with values and integrity. Because they didn't shut off my mic. And I'm not going to censor myself to make people comfortable. I'm going to utilize my free speech the entire time. The problem is that now we have someone who is running for treasurer who's not going to be highlighting these things. He's not going to be attacking Eleni Kounalakis. She didn't even show up for that debate. I was the only Republican on the debate stage. I was the only Republican in the forum. And so we would rather get behind someone who doesn't show up than get behind someone who has the ability to potentially go on the offense, potentially pick up a seat. I mean, even if we're going to lose, why don't we lose spectacularly? Why don't we lose by going on the offense, right? And so the $21,540 that she donated to Steve Hilton helped. The fact that she sponsored CRA's convention and she became a lifetime member of CRA, I was told before the convention, hey, if you're qualified to speak and you got the delegates to speak at convention, you get to speak at CRA. And so I show up to speak at CRA, Jennifer Hawks speaks, and then I go up to speak and they say, oh, well, you've got to be nominated from the floor to speak. And I'm like, what the? Oh, because it says Jennifer Hawks has sponsored the CRA in the program and up on stage, this is how I'm being treated. And so it was the California Republican Party that ate me alive. They started releasing memos, a 4-page statement. They did a press conference saying that I was trying to Trojan horse the Republican Party with infiltrators when I was calling Christian conservative men, the kind of people that Charlie Kirk wanted to step into the Republican Party. You know, when the Republican Party was at its greatest, we were being led by people in their 30s and 40s and 50s, not their 60s and 70s and 80s. But we have an establishment that refuses to pass the torch. And it's because their palms are being greased. And so if we have a $348 billion budget, and if we pay $1.112 trillion in taxes annually, wouldn't it be great to have someone who's actually going to go in there and be a good steward of our wealth and manage those dollars and cents? Yes. But how is it that money is brought back into Hemet and San Jacinto? It's not. The city does what they can with what they got, right? It's through the money that leaves our county and goes up to Sacramento and leaves our county and goes to Washington, D.C., so that way Assembly, Senate, and Congress members can bring that back in pork. And if they bring it back in pork, they bring it back to nonprofits, they bring it to NGOs, they bring it back in private-public partnerships. All of that is being cut through checks through the Treasurer's office. Why wouldn't we bring banking, balancing, and disbursement back to the county levels? Allow the county treasurer to determine where that money is going to be spent, what it's going to be spent on, not Sacramento bureaucrats. And so I ran on a campaign of tax rebellion, decentralization of government, and restoration of government and what we used to stand for. And unfortunately, I got rug pulled by the California Republican Party. And so I would love to say that hope is on the way. I would love to say that things are going to change around in 2028 and that we're going to turn it around before 2026. But unfortunately, I'm looking at the outlook. And I know that people's eyes are glossing over. Maybe we're getting a little bit tired here. So I'm going to wrap it up by saying this. Except for you and me, we're in this together. You and me, we're in this. No, I'm just giving the rest of you a hard time. But the Republican Party is absolutely going to get slaughtered in 2026 on a California Republican Party level. And why? We had a massive opportunity in Prop 50. Because they moved 93.8% of the voter margins from competitive sweetheart districts in both the Republican sweetheart districts and the Democrat sweetheart districts. So if 93.8% of the margins are moved, that means that we had 26 seats that were within 15 points of what President Trump got in 2024, and we had 20 seats that were within 10 points of what Trump got in 2024. That's the closest it's been in California for years. And so what had happened was I was talking to Corey Uden, who is felling the California Republican Party alongside Corinne Rankin. And I said, well, what's the plan here? He said, well, we raised $13 million, and he was very happy about that. Well, I got off the phone with him, and I looked it up, and the California Democratic Party had raised $135 million. So of course we got slaughtered. I would have rather taken that $13 million, give $500,000 each to those, 13 candidates. The 13 candidates in those 26 different districts, $500,000 each, because God knows $500,000 in a congressional district, and that race would go a long ways, right, Mr. Mills? And so that would have been a great way to go on the offense. Let's see how we can not only protect the House majority, but pick up seats in California. And so I wanted to do that. I wanted to help us through Prop 50. I wanted to organize us with the executive branch, and I also wanted to organize the California Republican Party in what I call the Republican Regiment. And I volunteered. I told them I will organize this an hour a day every day. I'll be your head organizer. I'll do it for free for the California Republican Party. It took 340 days for them to call me back about taking me up on that offer. I get a call 10 days before the filing deadline from Corinne saying, I'm going to have Corey call you about implementing this idea so that we can flip seats. Too little, too late? Too little, too late? And so I wish I could tell you that hope was on the way, but I've tried to do everything that I can to bring hope for years. Now I'm going to go get a job, and I'm going to make sure that my family can eat. I mean, people would comment on my stuff and they'd say, oh, you look like another greasy politician. You just look like greasy Gavin. I'm like, okay, stupid. All right, stupid. Or they would say, oh, you look like just another typical Republican, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, so before I even open up my mouth, I'm another greasy Republican or I'm another greasy Democrat like Gavin. But people have turned their brains off entirely. They would start accusing me of getting in it to get rich. Mom, how much money have I made in the last 4 years? You moved in with me when you were fighting cancer. Kate was in substitute teaching. I was not selling a whole hell of a lot of real estate. In fact, I was asking my parents for money. I surrendered my car about 3 weeks ago. I filed bankruptcy 4 weeks ago. I'm not here to pull punches with any of you guys. I'm completely bankrupt. The pool in my backyard is empty right now. I can't even afford to keep up on my pool. My freaking oven was broken up until recently because I finally got a new oven on buy now, pay as you go type of thing. My freaking microwave is damaged. My freaking dishwasher. I am down to one AC unit. I'm broke. But I look like I have money. I understand money. I was making over $500,000 a year before I decided to do this. My family's going to be fine. I also get about $4,000 a month from the government because I've got, I'm 100% medically retired from the United States Marine Corps. I'm a combat veteran. I'm going to be okay is what I'm saying. I'm going to be okay. I was worried about everybody else. I wasn't worried about my 5 kids. I was worried about their friends. 2 of them graduated from high school this year. When I graduated from high school and I was homeless, I was never worried about being able to be anything that I wanted to be when I grew up. I was never worried about it. You could do anything you wanted to do in California. The world was my oyster. I could fill up my gas tank for $10.
No, I think it was 5 back there.
Yeah. Well, I graduated in 2003. Give me a break. I know I look like I'm 60 years old, but I'm 41. But in the California Republican Party, that's another thing. People say, you're young. We need you young Republicans. I'm like, I've got 5 kids. I'm balding. I'm not young. I'm young by Republican rooms, but I'm middle-aged. I'm on the back 9 at this point. Like, I wanted to bring in a strong Republican Party for the people that are coming in behind us, because those are the true conservatives. Those are the Pat Buchanan era conservatives. So what do we do here? I don't know. I really tried. I really did. I gave it everything that I got. I really, and more. My kids sacrificed tremendously. You know, they gave up a lot for this. You know, the fact that they don't even have water in the pool right now. I mean, it's a huge deal. I mean, like, you know, I know that might not sound like a big deal for some of you guys, but when I grew up with nothing, when we lived in women's shelters and children's shelters and Section 8 housing and government housing, and I was raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs, being able to provide a pool for my kids was a big deal. And now it's sitting empty because I can't afford to maintain the pool in my backyard. So I love you guys. I love the grassroots conservative Republicans that I've met throughout the state of California. But it breaks my heart because I go into Kern County and oil shut down the whole town. People can no longer afford to have their own drilling operations on their own land. So it's made it so that Main Street looks like a ghost town. It looks like a warhead. I go up to Humboldt, and yeah, marijuana was legalized, but it killed that industry up there. And also, they killed lumber. And they made it very difficult for a lot of farmers who were cattle grazing up there to maintain their livestock, especially during COVID-19. And so you've got a lot of people in Humboldt that were pushed out of business and pushed in other states. And when I was up there, the mall that's on Main Street was being auctioned off that morning. California's been devastated. And when I tell people what we need to do is we need to attack the Democrats, and I tell Steve Hilton we need to attack the Democrats, and he tells me he's going to start attacking Chad Bianco, I told him you missed the mark. And I was backstage with him, and Pastor Jack Hibbs, and Gina Gleason, and Mike Gates, and he was talking about how he's going to attack Bianco, and I told him, let everybody else attack Bianco. You should not attack Bianco, because at some point or another we're going to need to close rents. But the best way to beat 60% with 40% is by choking them out of the jumbo primary and getting 2 Republicans into the general. But who didn't believe that was possible? Carl DeMaio. And so Carl DeMaio was out there trying to get Hilton to go on the attack. And he also wasn't releasing the poll that Reform California had conducted. Reform California conducted multiple polls. Who do you want in the face-off between Hilton and Bianco? We can only get behind one candidate, and we got to support a fighter in this race. Make sure you vote by this Friday. And then we would vote, and then he wouldn't release the poll. And it's because they didn't want Bianco up in Sacramento. Because Bianco is not a member of the establishment. He's not the boy. He's not the media establishment pick. He's not the Trump pick. He's not the White House pick. I didn't care what Trump or Vivek Ramaswamy or Charlie Kirk had to say because none of them were from California. They didn't know what we knew. They didn't have to go through the COVID-19 lockdowns the way that we did. They didn't have to have their schools shut down for years the way that we did. They don't have to go to the grocery store and have to put back groceries. They don't have to, cut out their cents and their dollars and cents when they're trying to figure out how much money they can put in their gas tank in order to get on the trip that they're going on so that they can get home safely. They haven't suffered the way that we've suffered in California, and it's obvious. And because of that, we're left here looking out at a city that used to be a beautiful freaking city. I mean, hey, look it used to be a beautiful fucking city. It really did. This was the getaway for Hollywood. If you look up, I'm a real estate agent, so I'm tied into the history of an area. And when I look at some of these homes out here, I'm like, this was a beautiful home 40 years ago. This was a beautiful home. These 3,000, 4,000 square foot homes up in these hills, up in these orange groves. Hemet was a beautiful city. It was clean. But we've been treated like a dump. I live 15 minutes from here. We have been treated like a dump by LA, Orange County, San Diego County. They bring their homeless here, they drop them off. They bring their mentally ill here, they drop them off. And we don't have people in our city government that are willing to stand up for the people that need to fight here.
That brings up a question.
You should be able to walk out on Main Street at night. You should be able to go to the grocery store without being accosted. You should be able to walk around your senior community without worrying about who got in through the gate. And so I'm going to stop there because I'm frustrated. Joe's calling me now. Joe, I'm here. I'm talking to your people right now. Say hello.
Hi.
Hello. We'll talk later. Bye. Okay, questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, one of the things that I try to do is I try to find good fucking candidates.
Good fucking candidates.
And I
Amen.
can't find a damn candidate that's worth a shit.
Yeah.
For heavens, I have one,
Yeah.
and she's as good as we're gonna get right now. She's better than some of the others.
Good.
And I know that it starts at the bottom.
Yes.
I don't know what the hell to do because these people are so freaking stupid.
You're doing the right thing. You couldn't be doing a better thing
I am.
by finding good candidates.
Well, point me to the right direction.
Well, and that's the thing, and I did that too. Going all over the state of California, it's very hard to ask someone who is successful in the private sector to give up those private sector wages for public sector employment, right?
Yes.
You're making a killing right now on the school board, aren't you? How much are they paying you on the school board?
A little less than general relief.
So like $450 a month, right?
400.
$400 a month. And then, you know, so the thing is looking at my position, it was like $179,000 a month. But the people who manage the kind of funds that I'm looking at managing are making millions. When I was looking at asking attorney generals to run for, or attorneys to run for attorney general, I'm talking to people that are making $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million a year. And I'm saying, you want to make $174,000 a year as attorney general and take on the most corrupt state in the republic? And so it's very difficult to find good candidates that are willing to do it. And so we have some meetings, we're talking to different people. Because I look at it and I say, if we just bid off Riverside County and San Bernardino County, and we just focus on Congress, Assembly, and Senate as our leaders.
Yes.
Because the Congress and the Assembly are 2-year flips. Those are the people's house for a reason. When we're frustrated with Sacramento, the Assembly is supposed to be able to turn quickly. When we're frustrated with DC, the House is supposed to be able to turn quickly. In theory, the difficult thing is when you go to the Riverside County Republican Party, instead of wanting to drain the swamp of our swamp members, like Ken Calvert, for example, 34 years in the Congress, head of the Appropriations Committee for Defense, they say, oh, well, this is our swamp member. We take selfies with our swamp member. And I'm like, holy smokes, this guy's been in there for 34 years. We not only need to get rid of Nancy Pelosi and the Maxine Waters and, you know, the Schumers and, you know, all these different people, we also need to get rid of the Calverts and we need to get rid of the McConnells and we need to get rid of these people, you know, the Lindsey Grahams, the Ted Cruzes. You know, why are we getting rid of Massey? Why are we getting rid of Massey? And I look at this and I'm like, he overwhelmingly has the Liberty score. He's got an A. He votes conservative 99 times out of 100. And yet we're going to saddle up with Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham. So finding good candidates is difficult. And then when you get a good candidate, getting behind those candidates. And this guy got through the jungle primary. I don't know if you guys know this about Mr. Mel's here, and that was a crowded primary. You had some talent that you were against. You know, you were running against Ceci Truman. You know, you're running against a couple of different Republicans. The fact you got through is a testament to the hard work that you put in. So do everything that you can to help him flip the seat between now and then. But then come November 6th, let's start thinking about the next election cycle. Because we have to do it early. We worry a lot about election integrity, right? Oh, David, we've lost control of our elections. Did anybody go to the California Republican Party and see those elections? Does anybody want to talk to me about proxies?
Right.
So we talk about election
Yeah,
systems
right.
that are corrupt in the state of California, but they're not any more corrupt than our election systems in the California Republican Party. And so we can't save California if we can't save the California Republican Party. And we can't save our localities if we can't save the Riverside County Republican Party. But I think what's more likely is that Jeff Gonzalez and Leticia Castillo and Greg Wallace are going to lose. Because they all lost by 5% in the primary. They went through, but God help them, they've got the fight of their lives on their hands. And then if that happens, what are we going to do on a state level and at a county level so that, you know, we can actually pick up seats? Are these guys looking to close? Okay, so the lights turn off. And I did theater before and I've done stand-up comedy. When they turn off the light, that means you're bombing.
The hook is coming.
Okay, Buck is coming. Any other questions, guys? I'm really like, this is my last campaign event. I told Joe that I was going to do this. I tried to cancel on him, and he was like, Dave, you know, he said, come on out. I said, listen, even though I lost, you guys still want me to be there? He said, yeah, come on out. And so he said, but, you know, bring your napalm. And so I hope that I shed some light on this stuff.
You did.
I hope that I maybe confirmed some things that you guys already thought. I wish that I could point towards more solutions, but I did that for 4 years. Now I'm ready to go home and lead my family. Anything else from anyone else?
We appreciate it.
Thank you for
Appreciate
coming.
you guys. Thank you. Thank you.